Hey there, micro folks. This is Mr. Hooker, and today we will be doing Chapter 11 Pure Monopoly, the other end of the spectrum from pure competition. So let's get to work here. So, Pure Monopoly is all about a single seller, one producer of a good. There are no close substitutes. It is a unique product. It is the only thing like it out there. They are price makers, not price takers this time. They have all the control over price. The goal is to be them, right? And there's a lot of hate given to monopolists, but let's be honest, it's probably more just jealousy or envy. Because if you could be a monopolist, you would be a monopolist. That's just what it is. There's blocked entry, strong barriers. There's very strong barriers to entry. They're not complete. They just have to be strong enough to keep people from getting there. It's a waste of resources to create complete barriers to entry. You just need very strong barriers to entry. For non-price competition, which remember is advertising, it's mostly PR, but they might engage in advertising to increase demand in certain areas. It just kind of depends on what those areas are. All right, some examples of monopolies: public utility companies, natural gas, electric, cable, which cable's going through a really rough time thanks to streaming services. Um, and then the question becomes, is that really worth it? Too, because now you got the streaming services all want their piece of the pie, and you've got a streaming service for everything now. So how much better is that? So near monopolies, you've got Intel, you've got Android, and professional sports teams. So the teams themselves are monopolies for regions. So regional monopolies, and that's how that goes. So it's kind of interesting how that goes. Um, and so you'd have a regional monopoly for an area. Your each team is that monopoly. Except for like New York, LA, and other areas with multiple teams, they're not monopolies. Manchester, with Man U, Man City, those kinds of things. London with like 5 or 6 clubs, something like that, 7, 8. They've got a ton of football clubs over there in London, or European soccer, however you want to call that. But they've got a ton. So it is what it is. The barriers to entry are the factors that prevent firms from entering the industry. You've got the economies of scale, which is the ability to produce on the downward sloping portion of the average total cost curve. And if you can get an average total cost curve that just approaches zero and keeps going down, even better. The natural monopoly, where you have it where one firm can produce the entire scale of production, and if you add a second firm, it increases the cost for everybody and makes it not worth doing. We have network effects. Basically, those network effects are the idea that it is better for you. You basically gain effects based on who is using the good. And so if you think of the idea of like social media for that, um, is it worth it? Basically, how is it if somebody else is in on the social media? If nobody else is on it, it's no good. If somebody else is on it, it's better. And those are what we call network effects. And so the more people that are on, the better off it is. Cell phone companies did this way back in the day. A number of you may be too young to remember this, but they used to have those plans where you would choose 5 or 10 people to be in your network or your group, and for those people, calls to them were free, and everybody else you paid for. And so that was basically to try to get you to get other people to be um, in your group or on their plan, yada yada. So it was kind of an interesting way to go. That legal barriers to entry, like patents and licenses. um, Patent is an exclusive right to a production process for a period of time. You could also have copyrights, trademarks, those kinds of things. um, you had Ohio State University trying to put a, what was it? They were trying to put a patent, not a patent, a copyright on the word "the." So a copyright on the word "the," which is just insane. Ownership or control of essential resources. Um, so if you own a resource that is essential to um, how things go, to making a good, like Alcoa, which is now, what is that, Denso now, up in Maryville, used to be Alcoa, and they used to own pretty much all of the bauxite. Um, and so um, that was, they controlled the bauxite, which was an essential um, ingredient in making aluminum, and that's why they were the number one aluminum producing company in the world for a while. Pricing and other strategic barriers. If you are able to control things and be able to control and price below others, you basically have priced other people out of the market. So that's another way to do that. So economies of scale, the natural monopoly piece. So if you can get an average total cost curve like this and are able to produce the majority of the market, you can price way below what other people would be able to enter at, and therefore you are the one firm for the market. Now, a lot of times this happens with government approval, and it's a government contract kind of thing. So a lot of utilities have government contracts and say, hey, you are the one. So you will produce for this area, you will produce for that area, yada, yada, do not cross these lines. And so that's how that works. It's just expensive. It's massively expensive to do. Think about how much it costs to have a substation, power generated, and all that stuff. So, and then run the lines. So, the monopolist is the industry. The monopolist demand curve is the market demand curve. So the demand curve is downward sloping. And then for this one, because it is a downward sloping demand curve, marginal revenue is now less than price. It slopes about twice it's about twice as steep as the demand curve. So here we go. Quantity 0 to 10, price, which is the same as average revenue. I told you that would be the same for all market structures. 172, 162, 52, 42, 32, 122, 112, 102, 92, 82, 72. So total revenue, price times quantity, 162, 304, 426, 528, 610, on to 720. Marginal revenue, 162, 42, 122, 102, 82, 62, 42, 22, 2, negative 18. ATC, 190 on down to 103 in a U shape. Total cost, 100, 190, 270, 340, 400, 470, 550, 640, 750 on to 1030. Your marginal cost, 90, 80, 70, 60, 70, 80, 90, 110, 130, 150. And profit or loss, losing 100, losing 28, 34, 86, 128, 140, 122, 74, losing 14, losing 142, losing 310. So your winner is making 140 at 5 units. That is the best you are going to do. So price and marginal revenue in a pure monopoly. So there's your demand curve. So you see there going from 3 units to 4 units. You lose $30 in the basic price piece, but in the quantity, you're going to gain 132. So marginal revenue is less than price. The monopolist is your price maker. They are going to be able to set the price because they are the only firm in the market. They set the price in the elastic region of the demand curve. So when we did elasticity, I told you to look at that linear curve and note that linear curves have an elastic, and inelastic, and a unit elastic portion. That would be important in this unit. In this third module, this is where that takes place. They are going to set it in that elastic portion of the in the elastic portion. There you go. There's your elastic. There's your inelastic. They are going to be in the elastic portion where the total revenue is rising before it hits its peak. That is the best way to do that. Kind of how you have to play that, right? So, profit maximization, we're going to do the same thing we did with perfect competition as far as the profit box, except now you have to draw an extra line because you don't have that line drawn for you for the top line. Now you got to do a few extra things. Marginal revenue equals marginal cost is always your profit maximizing point. So where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, that is your profit maximizing quantity, except we don't buy on marginal revenue, we buy on demand. So now you have to go up to the demand curve, take a hard left, that is your price. Come down to average total cost, take a hard left. So where demand is, that is your profit, that's your revenue per unit. Down to average total cost, that's your cost per unit. Bam, there you go. That is economic profit. Take those two hard lefts, and that's your economic profit. And so that is that one. Graphically determining profit, maximizing output. Step one, determine the profit maximizing output, find where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Step two, determine the profit maximizing price by extending a vertical line upward from the output determined in step one to the pure monopolist demand curve. In step three, determine the pure monopolist economic profit using one of the two methods. Find the profit per unit by subtracting ATC from the profit maximizing output and the profit maximizing price. Multiply the difference by the profit maximizing output, which is what we just did. And then find total cost. And that's just the total cost method is just way too much there. All right. Misconceptions of monopoly pricing. It's not the highest price, and we're using total, not unit profit. You do have the possibility of losses. If you're bad at business in other market structures, you're probably bad at business in monopoly, and you will lose money. This doesn't magically make you good at business just because you don't have competitors. Let me just be honest about that. So ATC is high. If ATC is higher than price, you will experience a loss. And if AVC gets above that, then yes, you will have to shut down or need to shut down. This just does not make you magically good. There is inefficiency here. So note that. So if you had the supply, you got the supply equals marginal cost there on the left. If you look on the right, marginal revenue, demand, where marginal cost equals demand, that would be where a competitive firm would produce, right? Where marginal cost equals price. So QC would be a competitive firm's quantity. PC is a competitive firm's price. However, a monopolist is producing at QM and charging PM. So that blue triangle, blue, gray, whatever that is actually the efficiency loss because we are a monopoly, not a competitive firm, purely competitive firm. So they would be charging, the difference between D and B for us, and that's between PC and PM, and that's just that difference, and they're giving us the difference in quantity between QM and QC. So those two differences make it such that a competitive firm would give us more at a lower price, but a monopolist, because they have no competition, sells us less at a higher price because they can. So some of the economic effects of a monopoly: Income transfer. There are some cost complications. They do have the economies of scales, producing on the downward sloping portion of the ATC. There is some simultaneous consumption piece. I mentioned the network effects. There is an X inefficiency. Basically, that's producing off of the ATC curve, so off and above the ATC curve. And they have rent seeking behavior, where basically they are trying to do the best for themselves and not for their customers. So, they're not really looking out for their consumers, they're looking out for the firm, which is not really what you would want them to do, but they do it anyway. And then they're not really all that interested in technological advances because they're more interested in profit. And so that is kind of the way that goes. So they may not be the most technologically advanced firms because, hey, why do I need to advance? Why do I need to buy the new technology when the technology I have is working just fine? And nobody cares. I mean, these people are still going to buy what I offer them. It's not that big a deal. Where are they going to go anyway? So there are some policy options that the government has. One is antitrust laws. They can break up the firm. Um, we had some of that with Microsoft and some other firms. They busted Microsoft into like three pieces. Has that really changed a lot? Probably not. You can regulate it where the government determines the price and the quantity, or you can just straight up ignore it, let the time and the markets figure it out, and possibly get rid of the monopoly if you just don't give them protection. That's the other side of that. You have to eliminate some of the protections they may have as well. Competition from foreign multinationals as well. Bayer in Germany produces chemicals, which is which competes with some of the American chemical companies. Volkswagen competes with the automobiles. Michelin in France is a tire company. Lenovo, electronics. Nestle for food products. Trafigura in Singapore is commodities trading. Panasonic in Japan's electronics. Petrobras is in Brazil is gas. Royal Dutch Shell is gas. Samsung in South Korea is electronics, and Toyota in Japan is automobiles. So price discrimination, which we talked about in the elasticity chapter, same thing. Changing different buyers, different prices. They're not based on cost differences. You have to have some monopoly power, some market segregation, and you have to prevent resale. So we talked about that in chapter 6 as well. So we're not going to do a whole lot with it. Some examples: business travel. We assume that if you are not traveling over a Saturday night, that you are traveling for business and therefore you pay a higher rate because we figure you are going to get reimbursed. If you're traveling for Saturday night, over a Saturday night, maybe you're going to see grandma, so we charge you less. Movie theaters, as I said, they will give you student discounts. Golf courses, if you go play golf early in the day, we assume maybe you're a senior. My brother loves to play golf and he will do this. And they also have veterans things they will do. He's a veteran and they do a lot for golf courses, will do a lot for veterans, like certain days of the week and early. So retired veterans will go play a lot, like on certain days. And so he has learned that one and he plays a ton with some veterans groups. But they'll get a group together. There's groups that'll get together and they'll basically take over a golf course early in the morning. Railroad companies, coupons, the people who will expend the energy to clip coupons can get deals, and then international trade as well. So here's the thing with that. You see on the left the inelastic demand for that for a good, and then on the right you see the elastic demand. So they're capturing both groups of buyers, and that's that price discrimination. Natural monopolies, you have that choice. If you're going to regulate them, are you going to have them charge the socially optimal price, where you set the price equal to the marginal cost, or the fair return price, where you set the price equal to ATC. That is your dilemma of regulation, because once you start doing that, you can't really change. If somebody says, yeah, I don't like that socially optimal price, I'm out. See you later. You can't then later change and say, well, okay, we'll let the next business charge fair return. In America, if you do that, the first business now has the right to come back and sue you as a government and say that you should have let them charge the fair return price. And so that doesn't work so well. It's really a thing. So monopoly price up there at the top, fair return price there in the middle, socially optimal price at the bottom. So if you tell a firm that, hey, you must charge for socially optimal price, and they're like, yeah, no, we can't do that, we're out, then you can't let a second firm come in and charge the fair return price. Because the first firm can be like, yeah, we'd have charged the fair return price. It becomes a terrible, terrible thing for you as a government, as a local government. All right, the COVID-19 pandemic revealed a lack of spare capacity in the natural monopoly of computer chip industry. We faced shortages in products that contain computer chips. Just-in-time delivery and other efficiency measures were largely to blame. And now they have started making stuff here. They've started for national defense and other reasons to start making semiconductors and other computer chips here in Arizona and Texas, I believe. So we're trying to fix that, but we're still short. So that's it for that. Next up is going to be monopolistic competition. Y'all take care. We'll see you later.